Welcome to A to Z with B, an innovative talk show with Beatrice Tony Bailey. As your host, B will be discussing today's hottest topics and insights into different faiths, cultures, and religions. Now sit back, put your feet up, and let's see what's buzzing with B.
Well, welcome. This episode of A to Z with B is brought to you by a wonderful donation by the Relationship Skills Center of Rancho Cordova. You can reach this innovative organization by calling 916-362-1900. Now, tonight's episode is entitled Relationship Crisis. And folks, there are a lot of relationships in the United States and across the world that are really in a crisis. The divorce rate right now in the United States is 50%. That's 1 out of every 2 marriages end in divorce. And I've been divorced, and I think a couple of you out there have probably been divorced as well. And the interesting thing is the percentage does not change when you're looking at the demographics of different churches. So it really is a troubling episode. Now, tonight's episode will examine the different behaviors and skills that people need to develop before we stroll down the aisle to sometimes not so wedded bliss. It's really funny, in California you can't drive a car, you can't drive a car unless you have a license. However, you can walk down the aisle, have people throw rice at you or what have you, and still not have the training that is needed in order to have a successful marriage. Now, the problem is we just don't have the same kind of headset that we need to have training before we get married, before we become parents. I think a lot of us, if we had had that kind of training, perhaps we wouldn't have made some of the personal decisions that we have made at this time. Now, you know, it's funny how we're all connected and we don't even know that we're connected. Last season, we taped an episode on the Centers for Fathers and Families, and hopefully you watched that particular episode. I had a wonderful young man on who was a young father who had custody of his daughter, did a wonderful job, blah, 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 blah. The episode was very well received. Well, then later I received a wonderful email congratulating me on having this young man on. He was her employee, and her name was Carolyn Curtis. And I thought, Carolyn Curtis? Carolyn Curtis? I thought, I think I know this woman. You know, she was a marriage counselor and all that. So I emailed her back and I said, is this you, Attila? And that was the nickname that I had given her, because she was my therapist when I went through a divorce from my children's father. And she's a wonderful, thoughtful person, but she's no nonsense. She's not into tell me when you lost your puppy and, you know, your mom didn't bake the chocolate chip cookies for you. I mean, she's not into that. She is a no nonsense kind of direct person. I just loved it. And my daughter mentioned to me when I told her I had reconnected with Carolyn, she says, Mom, when we went through this madness, she says, Carolyn did not treat me like I was a victim. So I have a special place in my heart. So at any rate, when we got back together, I played catch up and to find out what she was up to. So I want to introduce my guest. This is Carolyn Curtis, and this is Marvin. I keep calling him Mark. I've called him Matthew. But it's Marvin Guerrero, and he's one of the instructors as well. But let me tell you a little bit about Carolyn, who is the creator and owner and
director
and founder and chief humma, you know, at the Relationship Center. Now, she's executive director and founder of the Relationship Skills Center. She's a licensed marriage and family counselor. She has over 30 years of clinical experience, and she specialized and always has specialized in marital therapy. She's been an adjunct faculty member at Sac State and American River College. She's presented papers to major organizations. She's spoken at conferences and even spoke at the White House. Who was the president at the
Bush.
time? Bush.
W.
Oh, okay,
Yes,
W.
yes,
W,
yes.
that's the
Younger one.
younger one.
Right.
Okay, the younger one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is the one, well, I'll leave that alone. That's a whole nother show. Bush, okay, it's a whole nother show. But anyway, welcome to our show, Carolyn. Now, tell me a little bit about you personally. You could have done anything. You could have been maybe a concert pianist. I understand you like ballet. Maybe you could have been a cook. Why on earth did you want to become a therapist and then take on and try to resolve the problems of the universe? Why?
Well, I grew up in this highly dysfunctional home.
You too?
And oh yes, and I was the oldest of 4 kids. And I think, one of my girlfriends said, I was a therapist, with early training from 0 to, 15 in my own family. And I think there's been a part inside of me that wants to prevent other children from going through the experiences I did. And the part that was so painful for me in my childhood was watching my parents yell and scream at each other night after night. And my hope and desire is that children don't have to have that kind of experience.
I had one therapist on, and she said something about that I found absolutely, it was like a gut check. She says, when parents argue in front of their children, it's a form of child abuse. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. The cortisol levels go up. Children cannot think. I look back at my childhood, and I did very poorly in elementary school. And my teachers would accuse me of daydreaming all day long. I was not daydreaming. The cortisol levels were so high in my brain that I was unable to think. My brain was like, a television screen when there's nothing on the television. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's like for kids who grow up in this kind of environment.
Wow.
Yes.
What are some of the reasons you decided to leave your practice, so to speak?
Oh, yes.
And then to take on this new venture, the Relationship Skills Center? Because it's been a lot easier, I would think, to say where you were.
I went to a conference in Reno, and I found out that communities were getting together and organizing and managed to reduce their divorce rate by up to 20%. Modesto, California, reduced their divorce rate by 50% over 20 years.
By participating in these?
What they did was they required couples to get 4 months of pre-marriage education before they got married.
How did they enforce that?
Every single church in their community made that agreement. So you could not church shop. And they had stories of couples going to one church, and they'd say, well, you're required to take this education. And they say, well, no, thank you. And they'd go to another church and get the same piece of information. So basically what started happening was everybody in their community took pre-marriage education. And what we have found nationwide is that about 20% of couples make a decision not to get married by taking these classes. And those were couples that probably never would have gotten married anyway. Mm-hmm. So
that's phenomenal.
Isn't that phenomenal?
It is.
And
is.
In comparison, when I started this back in 2004, in 2003, for every 100 marriages in Sacramento County, there were 82 divorces.
What?
Yes. And in Modesto, for every 100 marriages, there were 45 divorces.
Wow.
So I knew this was working.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many reasons that go into marriage and divorce rates that, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I'm not going to go there. But it is an interesting point of comparison that, things do change when couples get the education they need to create healthy relationships.
Well, it's like anything else. Knowledge is power. I mean, and people are, I was 22. I was 22 one time. I was 22 when I married my children's father, and I married him for the wrong reasons. I didn't like my hometown, so I said, I'm leaving Davenport, Iowa by hook or by crook. Well, that's another episode, but I left.
And also in our generation,
right.
That we all got married younger.
Right.
I was 21 and going to school at UC Davis, and some gentleman came up and told me that I was an old maid because I was not married by the time I was 21. Mm-hmm. And that was the average age of marriages back in 1966.
Wow.
And today, the average age for marriages for men and women are about 28 and 29 years mm-hmm. old, respectively. Mm-hmm. So people are taking longer to figure out what they're doing and how to make good partnerships. And in fact, our divorce rate is going down since 1970.
Nationally or
nationally.
just in California?
Just nationally, divorce rates are going down from the peak that we experienced in 1970.
Are people still getting married? Are they living together?
They are living together and they're cohabitating because the legacy of the 1970s is actually that people are afraid to get married because they're afraid that they're going to get divorced. And they're willing to do whatever they can do not to get divorced, and that means not getting married. And this is creating a whole new set of problems because children are at greater risk in cohabitating relationships.
Why is that?
Children need parents who are committed to being together forever. And that gives a kind of stability for children that does not happen with cohabitating couples. In fact, that is our biggest risk for our children today. Currently, our statistics in Sacramento County is that 34% of our children are now being born to unwed couples.
34%?
34%. Over 6,000 children every year in Sacramento County are born to unwed parents. And this puts them at risk for growing up without a father in the home and growing up in poverty.
It's interesting. When I was researching this episode, Carolyn emailed me a link to an extremely powerful video that really it showed young girls and how they're impacted growing up without daddy. And I got into about 2 minutes of it, and I couldn't handle it. And I said, I can't show this. I can't. I mean, I'll be blubbering. You know, I mean, I had a good relationship with my dad, but I'd be blubbering. It was just,
Wow.
it was just devastating to hear their stories.
And this is one of those things that we have to continually, or relook at again, is the importance of fathers, both for men and for women. They now have new research done on brain development about how the play style of the fathers, and fathers play differently with their kids than moms do. I'm sure you noticed.
Right.
You know, dads are more energetic and expressive, moms are more educational, moms are more cautious about how far away they can get. Well, they have discovered that this play style of fathers teaches emotional control to children. Now, you don't get this kind of brain development, with just visitation. This comes from children being raised by a loving, caring, engaged father who plays with them. A successful father, in my mind, is a big toy. The little kid comes running out the door and goes, "Daddy's home, Daddy's home, Daddy's home." That is a great dad. Okay, that's what our kids need.
You know what? I guess a father would have to check himself. Suddenly, the father comes home and the kids scatter.
Oh, yes.
That lets you know that
things aren't
something
going
ain't
right. And why this is so important, they did this emotional control study. It's called the Marshmallow Study. And it's such a fun study that they tell these kids that you get one marshmallow right now. And if you can wait I'm going to leave the room, and if you can wait till I come back, we'll give you 2 marshmallows. And then they watch these little 3- and 4-year-olds. And they're wonderful. They're putting their hands over their eyes, and they're sitting on their hands.
Right.
They're doing everything. One little girl puts her hands over the top of the marshmallows and then licks her hand.
Right.
Okay. And one little kid, as he's walking away, the kid's reaching for the marshmallow. He comes back and says, "Look, you wait a little bit, and you can have 2 marshmallows." I'll tell you, that kid had that marshmallow in his mouth. Now, why should we care about this? A difference of 125 points on an SAT exam between the kids who can wait, who can delay gratification, and those who can't. Think about a kid in the 3rd grade, and by the way, 3rd grade is that crucial moment when kids are successful or not, whether they can sit in a chair all day long, because that's what it takes in the 3rd grade. If you don't have emotional control, you can't sit in that chair. And when they followed these kids that had the emotional control, they got along better with their partners, did better financially, made more money, had more successful careers. All of those things come with emotional control.
Wow.
And that comes from having a dad in the home. And then we also have all those other horrible statistics about, kids, 70% of the men who are in prison grew up without a father in the home. And I mean, there's just one horrible statistic after another about the devastation that happens to our men and our kids.
And as you mentioned, the importance of going through the various type of training and education so you don't get to that particular point. And I think it's phenomenal. I've always said, if I had control over the world, people would have to, if you're madly in love, you'd have to go through mandatory counseling and not really get married for at least a year or two and not have kids for about 5 years, because you've got to get together and know each other as a couple, because once you introduce the kids, I mean, it's just a whole nother variable. You may not be prepared for it.
We recommend that you wait 2 years from the time you meet someone and you marry them. And there's logic behind this. Like, let's say your birthday is a big deal, okay?
Right.
So you have your first birthday, and, you know, your partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, you know, in their family, birthdays were not a big deal. So he ignores or she ignores your birthday. So you sit down, you have this meaningful conversation saying, you know, the most important day in my life is my birthday.
Right.
I really need you to pay attention to this. And then you have to wait a whole nother year to see if anything changes, you know? So you have to wait to see, oh, he got the message or she got the message. But if you hurry up this cycle, you don't get a chance to find out. I mean, that's why 2 years is the recommended time.
But what do you think about when you people say love conquers all? Love, I'll just love them. I just love conquers all. That's funny.
Love conquers everything in the first 6 months.
Right.
Well, actually, you know, the hormones in an early relationship are just phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you have those rose-colored glasses and you can see nothing.
Right.
And we know that those kind of feelings go away within about 18 months. And then what happens is you get to see whether the friendship is what lasts. Because the research shows that couples that are good friends are the relationships that last.
Well, that's true, because there's times that I know my late husband, and that if he and I got into an argument, we really get an argument. I argued, he didn't. If we got into an argument, it was our friendship. We valued each other too much as friends to let it stay, you know, funky or something like that. But there are a lot of couples that are married, but you wouldn't have that person for a friend. I mean, maybe you're married to them, but you know, you wouldn't even walk across the street and have a cup of coffee with them, let alone be married to them.
Right.
You know,
So
not
that's
that
what
it
you
applies
want.
to me or
That's what you
anything.
want, is you want to be married to your best friend.
Right.
Who you have a great sexual relationship with.
Right.
I mean, that is a great marriage. And one other thing I wanted to mention here is that one of the more phenomenal things that have happened in the last 20 years is we finally have had researchers that have figured out what goes on in a great relationship. There's a fellow up in Seattle that actually hired couples to come and spend 24 hours in an apartment, and he videotaped them, and then he followed them for 14 years. So he could figure out which ones stayed together and which ones got divorced. And he actually figured out what makes a great relationship. And then what he did, or he took this material and he hired educators to come in and put this information in a classroom setting. So we can now teach people how to have a great relationship.
Can you name just 3 variables to have a great relationship? Just 3.
3. One is that in disagreements, you have 5 positive comments for every negative comment. That during your disagreement, you stay interested in your partner and what your partner has to say. You are supportive of what they say. That you crack jokes while you're disagreeing. And you are physically affectionate with one another while you're having a disagreement.
Isn't that pretty tough to do?
Oh, well, let me tell you, when we watch the masters of relationships, they are laughing through the whole conflict. And I watched this video, my husband and I watched this video of this couple talking about their financial difficulties. He saved and she spent. Okay, pretty intense problem. And they're talking about this problem, and she is just cracking one joke after another. And they're laughing, and at the end of this 15-minute conversation have been solved a bit and piece of it. So this isn't something we do really naturally. This is something that either you watched other people do, so you adopted this, or you make an intentional decision to say, I'm going to do this differently. And it's phenomenal.
It's about choices. I mean, certainly growing up, I mean, I don't know who came from a functional family that agrees. I mean, there's more dysfunction going out there than not. But after a bit, I mean, how long are you going to blame mom and dad? I remember Patty Davis. I read an excerpt from her book. She wrote a tell-all book about being Ronald Reagan's daughter. But she said, as long as you continue to blame your parents for the condition of your lives, you will forever remain a child. There's choices you make. You know, I didn't have a good role model coming up. Yeah, you did. You had an excellent role model on what you didn't want to do. You know, it's nice if you had, you know, one that's perfect, but you know what? You're doing everything I sure don't want to do with my kids. So it's a matter of just being open and receptive to the different options, again, that you have around you.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And keeping your mind open. You know, yeah, I remember counseling this one couple, and I talked about, you know, people using those 4 things while disagreeing. And they said, nobody can do that. That's an impossibility. I don't know anybody who does that. And I said, well, you know one person.
Right.
Me. Yeah.
You know what? And laughter is important. I mean, laughter is really important. Not that, oh, you're spending money and I can't save it. That is so, we're not saying that. But a lot of people just take themselves too seriously. It's just like, oh, come on. No one's going to develop cancer if you admit the fact that you're wrong. You know what? I was wrong. And fellas, listening to us tonight, I want to tell you one of the best things you can do. You want your wife to start her complaining or her nagging or whatever, then just come out with it. If you come home late, she's wonderful dinner. You know what? I was insensitive. I should have called, and I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Dang it! Where are you going to go with that? What? What are you going to go with that? There's nothing you can do. You know, so again, I guess you got to pick and choose which hill you're going to die on.
Yes. Well, you know, one of the secrets of success for men and women is that women are the keepers of the relationship. You know, they're the ones who are keeping track on where are we and how are we doing. Mm-hmm. And when women bring up problems, they need to bring them up softly and gently. They have discovered that men...
I can't put my hands on my hips.
Oh, no.
Can't wag the finger.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You know, they have actually found that men are physically more sensitive to criticism than women are. So a lot of times women say to their man in tones or in attitudes the same way they'd say to their sister or a girlfriend.
Right.
It doesn't go over with a guy.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be more gentle. And that's the secret of success for women. For men, they have a different issue. The different issue...
Yes, they do.
Yes. Their issue is that in our culture, we're taught that you're not supposed to accept the influence of women. That isn't manly in our culture. Mm-hmm. And really what they have discovered is that men who accept the influence of women, who, you know, hear what hear what their partner is saying, can understand how they may have a differing opinion than they do, mm-hmm. and those are the men who are the happiest men in the world.
Oh, I bet.
The bad news is only 20% of our male population knows how to do that. Mm-hmm. Rotary, which I'm a member of, and Rotary is particularly known for relationships that last forever. You know, they're routinely men are married, they're 40, 50 years, and I've done this informal survey about what do they attribute the success of their marriage. And they say this very seriously and with a little tongue-in-cheek, but at some level they mean it. He said, what they routinely say to me is, I learned to say yes, and you're right. And he said, when I learned how to do that, things went better in my marriage.
Well, now, to play the devil's advocate for a guy, wouldn't that make him kind of going soft side up with the old lady?
Oh, let me tell you, these soft side up guys are getting a lot more than the ones who aren't.
A lot more.
Oh, yes, right.
Okay.
Yes, they get a lot more.
Of
sex.
Everything.
Of everything. They get a lot more because the lady is so happy.
Right.
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 So they may look like they are soft, but they're getting all the goodies.
Right.
And the men know it. The men who figured this out know
You've got to learn to do the dance. You work with your partner,
right.
You learn to do the dance.
Yeah.
Now, I'm looking at your website. You have a variety of different people on your board of directors. How do you select those people? Do they just come out of heaven and say, I want to be part of the Relationship Skill Center, or where do you get them from?
Actually, I work very hard to find board members mm-hmm. because we are such a new organization that most people don't know about us, and they don't know that we exist, so they don't know to come and volunteer for us. Mm-hmm. And what we're about is creating healthy families by teaching parents how to get along and how to help people make healthy decisions in their relationship. Mm-hmm. So I have gone out in our community and asked people to be board members. And I've met them through our membership through the Sacramento Metro Chamber of Commerce, through our Rotary membership, through our membership in the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And all of those have brought us connections to people in the community that are on our board. And we're regularly looking for new board members and people who want to help make this happen.
That's wonderful. Now, sitting patiently on the couch is Marvin Guerrero. Marvin, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and how you came to be interested in the field of marital relations.
Well, I am married for 17 years already. I've been married 17 years and still married.
Still married. Apparently he's a really good cook. So that helps a lot.
And me and my wife, we have 5 children. Our oldest, he's in high school already, and I know it's very challenging when you have teenagers. And our youngest is 3. So
high school to 3. Hello.
Jeez, yes.
Stretch. And I love our program, our whole setting, because it helps me help couples that were in the same shoes I was in the past.
So were you a former student?
No, but I heard of Relationship Skills Center through one of my mentors for marriages.
Okay.
And that's how I got involved. But I was in domestic violence before. Mm-hmm. Our relationship was very abusive. Mm-hmm. We got married when we were in high school. And
little baby.
Yeah.
And I understand and I communicate the importance of relationship education to our couples when I'm at the WIC office or at the Department of Human Assistance office. I let them know and I tell them about the mistakes I have done.
Do you do like a seminar, or do they have a program whereby you would go and tell your story, or how does that work?
Yes, they actually allow us to do a 2-minute presentation about our program for every class they have. And we also recruit one-on-one when they're in the lobby. So we get to just like fish.
Oh, that's good. No, that's good. And again, with your background, having grown from a very volatile situation in your relationship and then ultimately your marriage, you have credibility. You've got street creds. I mean, it's not like you were a little choir boy, and never did anything wrong. And that also, it's not one of my pet peeves, one of my little, I guess it's a pet peeve, is people who try to give me advice or try to give advice, and you haven't walked a mile in my shoes. I mean, it's like people who want to give you advice on how to raise children, they've never had a child. Mm-hmm. You've never had a child that you want to take and just throw out in the middle of the road. And you felt that way. I mean, you and as a grandparent, one of my favorite expressions is, and I love my grandchildren, I have 5 of them, but your reward in having grandchildren is not having killed your own. Because your kids, and my kids, I found them very frustrating on the odd years, 13, 15, 17, and then they go off to college, come back 19, so I mean, it can be, it's a very rewarding, but it can be a very, very frustrating situation. So I think it's great that you have the street credibility as you'd go out and say, look, man, I've been there, done that, but let me show you another way that we can do this far more effectively. Now, how do people enter your program?
Well, they must qualify through a program, mm-hmm. and we recently had our new grant, which allow us to serve a lot more families.
Tell us about that grant. There's a grant, the same grant. It's pretty impressive. Tell us a little bit of background, Carolyn, about that.
Well, we recently were one of 20 organizations to receive a new Healthy Marriage grant, where we were able to bring relationship education to low-income families, and that includes singles who are parents, as well as cohabitating couples or romantically involved couples, so they don't even need to be living together, and then couples who are married. And we're in a position to put them in a 15-hour class, and Marvin has been one of our instructors in terms of teaching our couples how to get along. And it's a 15-hour class. We provide childcare. We provide assistance with transportation costs. We provide play care for their other children, and when they complete the program, we give each person $50.
Wow.
So
each couple or each person?
Each person gets $50.
That's good.
And what happens is, and we routinely hear this from the men, that the $50 got us in the door, but the material kept us coming back because everyone is hungry to know how to make this healthy family. And actually, we're all hungry to be loved.
Right.
And we're all hungry to be loving. And that path isn't always clear. And
people quite often, I have a family member that can be very, very frustrating to deal with, but the approach is, it's like, hug me but don't touch me. Feed me, I'm hungry but don't feed me. You kind of go, how do you do that when you know that is that person's desire, highly desired to be loved and to be taken care of, but yet and still may conduct themselves in a manner that's the last thing that you want to do. So it's learning how to negotiate through all of that. Now you mentioned low-income families. Are these the only people that are eligible for the program?
yes.
Okay.
And they could be low at 200% of poverty level currently. They can be eligible for TANF but not necessarily already on it, or previously TANF recipients. So any one of those qualities would make you eligible for the program.
Now we talked about the children earlier. Now how are the children at risk?
Oh.
I mean, is the obvious. I mean, it's a legacy, I would think.
Well, one is that children are at risk in several ways. Children are at risk when they watch their parents argue and fight with each other. They're particularly at risk if they watch domestic violence. The other way they are at risk is when a parent leaves. And you know, there's been some new research coming out which really blows my mind about children with sperm donors who've never known their father, and they feel the loss of knowing their father. So when we have a culture today that says it doesn't really matter whether we have a dad in this child's life or not, we know that all of those are injuries.
Well, there would be, because there would be that natural feeling of loss.
That's right.
It's, you know, and not being connected. Did I come out from underneath a rock, or why'd you do that? I mean, it's an interesting concept. I want a baby. I'm going to go have a baby. I'm going to go out and get a sperm donor, you know, and then have the baby, and then I've got this thing. I've got a cute little baby, but then you don't think about the child.
And I'm not meaning to be critical of anyone who had a child through a sperm donor.
Right, right.
I'm just talking about sometimes today we're discovering there's unintended consequences.
Right.
And that's what we need to be looking at. And we also know that children are more at risk for growing up in poverty without having two parents. It really takes two parents to support kids today. And you know, it is too hard to be both a mother and a father, and to make enough money to support everyone. And there's a lot of misconception about how much money someone gets. You know, today, if you're a TANF recipient,
what recipient?
A temporary assistance for needy families, which is TANF. If you are a family of 3, that's a single parent with 2 kids, you're living on a little bit more than $7,000 a year.
Wow.
Wow. Right. I don't know how anybody does that. I really don't. It takes 2 people. And you know,
it's like $800 a month or something.
Oh, I know.
And what's your rent? I mean,
I know.
This is not including rent.
No.
Because $800, what?
Right. Okay.
I mean, that's just your living expenses would be close to $800, let alone your housing.
Right.
Your freaking gas, you're looking at.
Right. Food. I mean, where?
Right. 3 kids, $800 could be food.
Right. Yes.
Right.
You got the picture.
Right.
And, you know, that's why we need 2 people. You know, the research really shows that even if 2 people are making minimum wage jobs and they're raising a kid together, they're doing much better than one person making minimum wage with 1 child.
Well, let me play devil's advocate. Let's assume that you do have people making minimum wage, they're together, they're able to put a roof over their head. But if the roof over their head is the roof over hell on earth.
Oh yeah, and that doesn't work. That's worse.
I mean, I would think so.
Okay, so I want to make that really clear.
Right.
We are not advocating couples staying together in situations of domestic violence.
Right.
Okay, we don't think that that's good for kids either. Better to live in poverty
right.
than to watch that kind of stuff.
Right.
All right. So, and better to be abandoned. And that's what the research really shows, that kids who witness a lot of conflict and violence are deeply injured by that kind of behavior, and they do better once those parents break up. Where children also get injured is with low conflict divorces, which means the parents, you know, the phrase that goes with these are, we grew apart, you know, low conflict. And for the children, they just wake up one morning and one of their parents is leaving. And those are the ones who are totally devastated.
Because they didn't necessarily see it coming?
They didn't see it coming. And it was fine for them. You know, as one workshop I went to, the woman said, you know, kids just don't care whether their parents are having sex or not. You know, they just want them to be together.
Right.
You know, but for the adults, that would be an important issue. But low conflict, and to think that that's 60% of our divorces, those are couples that probably with some counseling and some long-term work could make a difference in that relationship.
But there has to be obviously that desire. Now, can a person take the class more than once, or just go through it one time? I mean, $50 would be a nice little, you know.
Go ahead,
gift.
Marvin.
Well, actually, if they're married and they go through our Together We Can curriculum, and then later they get married, they can attend our next curriculum, which is Mastering the Mysteries of Love. And they could also do that. But once they go
get
through...
the $50 again?
Yes. So they actually get 100 combined. And we noticed that, you know, that's how we get them in. But after that, they really don't care about that. When they see that impact and the benefit, it's almost like, how can we enjoy this together, you know, as a family? And that's, to me, just having the guys come. By nature, as guys, we don't like to do nothing.
Right.
For
You heard, I didn't say it, you said it.
By nature. And having those guys go in there and they realize the importance of fathers and what their kids will be missing if they were absent is totally priceless.
Okay, now I'm going to play devil's advocate. I've taken the $50, you know, pre-relationship thing that I've done, Unlocking the Mysteries of Love and Marriage. Is there another one? Is there another course?
No.
But if there was another course, could I sign up for that? Could that couple sign up for that? I mean, is there...
Well, if we get a new grant down the road, we will probably include that.
Okay.
Yes, and what basically comes down to, you know, with the whole $50 and stuff, it is real hard for a guy to sit there even for $50 for 3 Saturdays.
When there's not a game on or something?
Yes, correct. And I challenge the man. I always let him know, hey, you know, food stamps can put food on your children's table. Section 8 can put a roof over their head, but what your kids need is a father. You know, as my mom, there was a period of time my mom was single, and she used to tell me, you don't need your dad. You know, you be fine without your dad. I'm good enough for you. And yes, I didn't want to make her feel bad, but I was like, no, Mom, I need my dad.
Right.
I want to see my dad. No, you don't need him. He's a jerk, whatever. And I'm like, Mom, you know. And I let the guys know, hey, the only times I used to have my stepdad tell me he loved me at times in the past was when I seen him drunk. And then he could hug me and tell me he loved me. I said, we need to be drunk to tell our children that we love them, or can we hug them? And to some guys, they were like, wow, I never thought about that. My dad was the same way. Every time there was beer in the house, he was happy. The beer was gone, he was mad, yelling at my mom. And I said, and like you said, you know, sometimes the best role model we have is the things that we don't want to do. And I grew up with a stepdad, even though I felt fatherless. As I became a man, I realized he was really a provider.
You have to be aware, and you became aware of what you had, as opposed to what you didn't have.
Exactly.
You know, what I'd like to do is to talk about on there. There was some really great on there, being the website. There's some really great quotes given to us by some people that were able to be helped by the Relationship Skills Center, which is at 916-362-1900. Let me read a couple of them. They taught me about finances. I was even able to open up a savings account for both of my children. I learned to spend more quality time with my son. It's great. I can tell it made a big difference in our relationship. It teaches you that family comes first. Nothing is more important. The teachers are great. Yay. Teachers are great. They make you want to come back to class. So it's more than the $50 that we talked about. It was a big change in our relationship to not fight anymore. There's just so much fighting. You know,
That's right.
I was raised in a home that was very similar to Armageddon. My first marriage was like hell on earth in some regards. And so I know that I'm not alone, you know, in that regard. I'm just bold enough to talk about it. We learn to negotiate instead of arguing and making a big deal out of little things. I guess the most important thing is at the end of the day, and you can chime in, you want to balance your emotional books. The Bible even says you don't let the sun set on your anger. And that, I mean, and what's it going to prove? I mean, you have to be right. I mean,
Yeah.
like I tell people, pick and choose what you're going to go to the mat for. But if you're flopping down on the mat all the time, then your fuse is too short. Do you want
Yeah.
to chime in, Carolyn?
Well, one is I think we all have our favorite quotes. And one of my favorite quotes from one of our participants is, she said, now we put our kids to bed at night and sit down and talk to each other. And we now know that our kids have a fighting chance. And I thought, oh, she got it.
Right.
She got it. That
right.
when we're a team and we're working together, our kids have a chance. And when we don't, we're just undermining the future of our kids.
Well, you know, and that's the most important thing, because if as a couple you're going through divorce, and that I'm very sorry that's happened, but you need to take your time and energy and focus on how can I get through this divorce and to be able to have minimum damage to our children, because the children are being impacted, and sometimes the parents are so selfish because they're so hurt with their thing, you know, with their thing, that they forget about the children. So it's interesting, when I used to go visit my late husband's family, we'd go back there, and they had an expression in his family is that you can divorce anyone you want. If you don't want to be married to them, you have to be married, but you don't have the right to divorce the family. So
Yes.
you go there, and an ex-wife will come in, an ex-husband will come in, they bring food, they go around, you know, they give each other kisses, and the kids are in and out, and there's not that kind of tension. And I thought it was just such a beautiful thing, but that's also something you have to learn. Like you're saying, I didn't know my second husband that long before we got married, and thank goodness he was a really sweet man. But I would come in from work. I worked for Xerox, busy woman. I'd come in from work, I'd drop down my briefcase, I'd go cook dinner, and he'd be standing there. And he would look crestfallen. I go like, well, what's your home before I did? You know, you didn't start dinner, by the way. But what's the deal? When I went back to his home, that's when I realized that family has a ritual. Whoever comes in the room, they went around and they kissed everyone.
Oh, wow.
And when they left, they went around and they kissed everyone when they left. And then when I went back there, I said, I got it. Because he didn't tell me, well, I'm from a family where we greet each other with a kiss. Once I went back there and I saw that, I made a point when I came home, drop my briefcase, I'd go in, give him a kiss, how was your day? And he was just as happy as he could be. But if we had spent that year together, because we've known each other just about a year, but a year around his family, I would have been able to have that kind of information.
Let me just add to what you just said, is that the research really indicates that one of the qualities of a healthy relationship is that they have ongoing rituals of connection. So they do things like, and this is called the 5 magic hours, that when you leave in the morning, you tell your partner what you're going to be doing that day. So you're emotionally connected all day long. The second thing that you do is every day you express an appreciation of your partner. 3 is every day you take 20 minutes and ask each other, how was your day? The other thing is every day there's some kind of physical touch between the two of you. And the last one is a 2-hour date once a week. Not going to a movie, but 2 hours where you sit and actually talk to each other.
Why not a movie? Because there's some men that think, sorry, I'm not beating up the fellas, that think, well, come and watch TV, come and go to a movie. Why does that count?
We need a conversation.
Right.
We need a conversation every week, and during this conversation we have 2 things to do. One is to re-find out who each other is, or find out something new about your partner that you didn't know before. So you continually get to know your partner deeper. And the other thing you do is you need 2 hours to solve the problems of your life and of your relationship. And you can't do that when you watch a movie.
Right, because the movie's giving you information. You're not feeding back. I can remember my pastor, Pastor Ethan Williams at St. Paul. He was saying he would challenge any man: take your wife on a picnic on the river, and see if you got anything to talk about. And that is a challenge. It's just sit there. I don't care if you're talking about the dandelions and look at lay in a blanket and look at the cloud formations. And I think that's a pig. No, that's a castle. That's a. I mean, something like that to connect. I know that my late husband and I, even if I was fussing about something, I own up to it, and that we always would play cards. We'd crawl in the bed, bring out the cards, and we would play cards or sit on the couch. We would play cards. We always would try not to end the night, on a negative note, because you don't know. Tomorrow's not given to any of us, any of us. Well, I think after talking to Miss Carolyn and to Marvin, I think that you would want to not walk, but run to the relationship center. And what I would like, relationship skill center, I'm sorry. What I'd like to do now is to break briefly and have you see a video really that encapsulates everything that we have talked about. Let's take a look at that video.
The first task of the newborn is simple. It must survive. So with baby's first breath, instincts kick in. They tell the baby to find comfort by nursing, to cry when hungry, and to use their remarkable short-distance vision to focus on their parents' eyes. For the mother and father, the newborn delivers a shared sense of wonder, pride, and likely some anxiety for the parenting ahead. But what if there aren't two parents? What if there is only one?
My different women, 15 kids. 15 kids all over the world. I got kids in LA, kids here, I got 15.
The last time I remember seeing my father, I don't remember. I couldn't tell you one thing about him. I don't remember anything about him.
That was my excuse to fight. That was my excuse to F up in school. That was my excuse for everything that I did wrong if my dad wasn't there. So when I learned that that wasn't going to get me through the rest of my life, then I had to take responsibility as a man.
Young people, they ain't ready to settle down. They ain't ready, they ain't ready to be tied down. Especially them young guys, they ain't ready to be tied down with no babies. They got a lot of living to do. They ain't ready for the marriage and all that,
It's hell. It's hard. Because it's all on you. I mean, it's not like you could turn to your husband or your man and say, well, what are we going to do? And you can't teach a boy how to be a man. I can't. I can't teach a boy how to be a man. And it's really hard.
Since 1960, the number of babies born in our community to single mothers has grown dramatically. For African Americans, 70% of babies are born to unwed mothers. In the Hispanic community, the figure is 55. For Caucasians, it's 40.
The consequences of marriage and family breakdown in America have been absolutely devastating. Mostly in regard to the lives of our children, we see dramatic increases in all of the pathologies and the risk that affect the children of this nation.
Single parents are 7 times more likely to live in poverty than their married peers. Their kids are more likely to be expelled from school, more likely to drop out of school, and 7 times more likely to experience physical or sexual abuse.
My mother was a victim of domestic violence. My father was an alcoholic, a drug user, and it's just a cocktail for a bad living environment for children. My brother, he looked like he was crying on his way home. Me not knowing, I was just a careless little 6-year-old, seeing him climb up to my mom's medicine cabinet. I asked him what he was doing, and he boldly said, I'm killing myself. 8-year-olds don't talk like that. The first person I got the call was my best friend's mom. By the time she came down to our apartment, he had a butcher knife in his hand. He was just cutting himself all over his body, and I was just bawling, just crying. There was nothing I could do to help. My brother was crying. He didn't want to be there. He was trying to run out. But I had already known that my home, wasn't my home. You know, it wasn't a place where I felt safe.
Family dysfunction creates adult dysfunction. It creates adult crime. It creates unhealthy children. It creates unhealthy neighborhoods and unhealthy relationships. And it's disturbing that our next generation is now growing up in a divorce culture.
America's children suffer most. A third don't live with their fathers. They are 3 times more likely to fail in school, 7 times more likely to live in poverty, and more likely to end up in jail.
The worst thing about divorce is before your parents get remarried, you have to go back and forth, and sometimes when my mom used to work, she would work a lot and I would go to work with her, but I would still be bored because she would have to work and she couldn't play with me.
Initially, when my parents got divorced, it was really hard for me because all of my friends' parents were married, and it was hard for me to see them with their family, and it's just like something that I didn't really have.
Where was I gonna go? That's what I was worried about. Losing my friends. You know, I didn't know if I was going anywhere else. I didn't know if I was going to my mom's or dad's. I might have been going somewhere else. I was just so confused.
Every now and then, a community has an opportunity to impact positive change at a relatively small cost, instead of spiraling downward at a much greater cost. This Flourishing Families Workshop, just one of many created by Sacramento's Healthy Marriage Project, is proof positive of such an opportunity. It's happening here and throughout the region in classes like this. It's where the most at-risk families are learning the skills necessary for forming and sustaining healthy relationships.
The home of John Williams and Shalonda Vonner hasn't always been picture perfect. They used to fight routinely, and like many of us, they argued about money. With 2 youngsters in the house and John's work in construction slowing, they have rearranged their lives. Much of their transformation is due to their work with the Healthy Marriage Project's Flourishing Families program.
Our life is completely prioritized and organized. You know, the
not
kids
perfect, but
no, we're so far from perfect. You know,
yeah, but we do it.
We're very happy.
Yeah.
Deborah Hoffman, News 10.
I'm only 23, and learning these skills right now, I know, is going to be like huge.
When I look at these young people from 40 down to the tiniest little people, and they still want to get married, then that gives me hope. It gives us a lot of work to do too. We have a big job to teach them how to do it, but I'm hopeful.
I was being selfish, and that's what made me decide to find help to get the tools that we need to fix our relationship. By understanding how you feel, not just how I feel, how you feel, you get to understand more the problem and to find the solution just by understanding.
By putting yourself in that person's shoes.
Now, do you see why I say you definitely want to contact the Relationship Skill Center, 916-362-1900. Am I doing pretty good?
Oh, you're doing great.
She's a sponsor, so I'm giving her her props.
And we did change the name of our organization.
Okay.
So we're no longer the Healthy Marriage Project, which is what's in this video.
Okay.
And because we didn't think it fully represented the work we were doing.
Okay.
Which is teaching all people in all relationships how to have a great relationship.
Now, Carolyn and Marvin, individually, what would you like for our viewers to know about the Relationship Skill Center?
I would like families to know that there is someone out there who care about their relationship, who care about their success, and we're here to provide the tools. They're the only ones that can make that choice. But later in life, they can say, we did not have a choice, because we're here. That's our goal, to see families flourish. and I love my job. I just
And you know what? It comes across, and you're very, very well spoken. Do you make an extra effort to reach out to the Hispanic community?
Yes, actually, that's I work more with the Spanish area, and I just breaking culture is hard because, like I say, we don't want to spend the whole day, listening, and to us, watching a movie is spending time together. That's what us boys do, We go to a game and we think we spend the whole time together, even though we just say, "What's up?"
Now, you want to tell us that in español, por favor.
Estamos aquí para ayudarles a todas las familias. Estamos para proveer un mejor futuro para ustedes como pareja y para sus hijos.
Muchísimas gracias. Tú eres muy amables.
Oh, wow. B. All right. Yeah.
Carolyn, what would you like to tell us about your special project?
There is hope for all of us. I think I want to say that relationships are the hardest thing we will ever do in our life. That wherever we are injured, wherever we are troubled, wherever we struggle, will show up in our primary relationship. And this is the greatest challenge we have in life, is to overcome those difficulties and to learn how to be loving and to be loved. And that's our mission. And when we think about, a friend of mine pointed this out to me, world peace starts at home.
Wow, how powerful. Well, I want to thank my guests, Carolyn Curtis and Mr. Marvin Guerrero, for coming on and expressing their viewpoints and their passion associated with the Relationship Crisis Center.
We are so honored and privileged to be here, and you're just doing a great job for us and our community. Thank you so much, B, for your contribution.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thank
you very much.
Muchísimas gracias. Kind of working that angle on that. Now, if you like our programming, you want to see more of our programming, please feel free to send your tax-free donations to RCC TV, care of A to Z with B, at 2212 K Street, Sacramento, California, 95819. And if you want to give them a call, 448-2212. Now, I want to close with a quote. Apologizing doesn't always mean that you're wrong or the other person is right. It just means that you value your relationship more than you value your ego. Thanks for tuning in. We hope to see you next week. Be blessed. When mom or dad is in prison, it's the children who really are doing hard time. But you can let them know that they are not forgotten. You can give the child of a prisoner the joy of Christmas this year by participating in the Angel Tree Ministry. Every child who is part of this ministry will also receive an age-appropriate presentation about the true meaning of Christmas. For more information, please contact the Prison Ministry Fellowship at 916-354-2742. Be blessed.